Perfect. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself to everyone here. Hi, I'm Julie Szmyd. I'm host for this room and club. As we get started, while we're waiting for people to show up to the room, things like that, I just want to kind of mention yes, as we've been saying, please use the share button at the bottom, that little upload icon. You can share it on social media. You can share it directly with others. If you are inviting others into the room that you think are interested, just be mindful to not ping too many people. You will get cut off by Clubhouse at some point. And to kind of avoid that, you can narrow the search by using words like data or data economy, things like that, right? We do highly encourage everyone, as Spencer was saying, to share on Clubhouse, kind of in the hallways, I think, as it might be. That'll just increase chances that people will come across this room, and we definitely want people to hear this conversation. So you'll find that the chat feature is enabled as well. Anybody that wants to use that, I'll be keeping an eye there. So if you have things to share, I'm happy to try to help facilitate that. Be sure to follow all of our panelists here today. Follow me. Be sure to follow Spencer. And we do encourage audience participation. So anyone in the audience, if you find yourself inspired, please feel free to raise your digital hand. We'll do our best to get to everyone. Quick note, our club is Consuli Conversations. In addition to this room, we host a few other rooms. We have a clinical trials room where we focus on a one burning question. We have a long COVID room where patients meet researchers, and a room dedicated to sickle cell where we explore the question of how is solving sickle cell disease related to health equity. You can learn more by following our club, Consuli Conversations. Just tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow. You can find in our profile all our upcoming events for the next few months. For any direct questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, if you would like to join this room again or have someone to recommend, you can find my direct email in my bio. Also, Spencer is a great contact. You can contact him directly. We love hearing from you guys. And please follow us on social media. You'll find our handle is @Consuli_Inc. You can find that in all the spots as well. And for those that don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth $20,000 per year. So we help people choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart-matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in things like clinical trials and data trials. There's no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net, currently pinned to the top of the room. Shortly, I'll also pin a link to our public virtual whiteboard where we welcome everyone and anyone to peruse highlights from past rooms and add any comments, suggestions, or ideas if inspired. We're really trying to build that up and turn that into a big community board. So please take a look and add your thoughts. So it is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to our room moderator, Spencer Gurley, who's our Data Dignity Ambassador at Consuli. Spencer will be introducing our distinguished panelists and guests. Spencer, now over to you.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's going to be a really great conversation today. I'm really looking forward to it. We've got a really diverse panel to talk about this really complex issue. So I'm super excited. I know Julie already mentioned the public virtual whiteboard, which we've been using to house all our notes from this discussions. We're really looking to push legitimate change and get some actionable items going. So feel free to stop on there if you have some notes. Also, we'll be taking notes throughout the event. But it is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel. Really looking forward to this one. First up, Christine von Raesfeld. Christine is the founder and CEO of People with Empathy. She is a leader in bringing a critically needed patient perspective to cutting-edge medical innovations. Committed to providing patients with chronic and rare diseases with the support they need, Christine works with patient advocacy organizations, industry representatives, and individual patients and their loved ones. You can hear Christine's perspective in the Clubhouse room Health Reconsidered, where she discusses medtech, digital rights, clinical trials, patient experience, and precision medicine. I'm turning the mic to Christine now. Christine is going to be helping me co-moderate this event. So, Christine, over to you.
Thanks, Spencer. So you pretty much said everything I do, so I won't go for another introduction, but I'm happy to be here and help moderate the conversation and make sure that patient perspective is still included in them. So do you want to call on who's next, Spencer? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can introduce people, and then when we're in the conversation, I'll need some help moderating there.
Go for it.
Next up is going to be Amin Iman. Amin is currently a project contributor at the Rally Ecosystem DAO. In the past, he's utilized data analytics in the Web 2 space towards process improvements in the areas of operations, marketing, and logistics. Also leveraging his experience in the crypto space since 2014, he's moderated and contributed to Bitcoin and crypto education rooms on data integrity for English and Farsi-speaking communities on Clubhouse, including Crypto and Coffee, Cafe Bitcoin, and Crypto Fundamentals. Turning the mic over to Amin for opening remarks. This is Spencer, and I'm done speaking.
All right, thanks again, Spencer, for the introduction. I appreciate you. I appreciate getting invited again on this panel and being able to share more on specific updates that's been happening in crypto, but also general data integrity practices that are propping up in the news right now. So really looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Heather Openshaw. Heather has recently completed her MBA and MPA at Presidio Graduate School, where she focused her research on de-radicalization and ethical technology. She works in marketing and communications and is passionate about using her skills to communicate complex subjects to everyday audiences to increase digital literacy and decrease the digital divide. Heather, the mic is yours for your opening remarks.
Thanks, Spencer. Yeah, hi everyone. I am super grateful to be back here. I think the last one I was in January, and I'm really excited to hear what everybody has to say. And I'm excited to learn some new things today as well. Thank you, and I'm done speaking.
Next up, going to be passing it to Mitch Jackson, excuse me. Mitch is an award-winning 2009 Orange County Trial Lawyer of the Year and 2013 California Litigation Lawyer of the Year. He enjoys applying his 35 years of practicing law to help and add value to consumers and clients who are doing the digital dance at the intersection of law, business, and technology, including the metaverse and Web3. Mitch, really glad to have you back on the panel. Passing it over to you for opening remarks.
It's so good to be here. It's been a minute, right? It's been a while since I've been on Clubhouse. It's good to see some familiar faces both on stage and in the audience. And I think when it comes to data on individual human beings, when we look at producing, sharing, aggregating, processing, analyzing this content, this is an important conversation to have. So many legal issues, so many societal and community standards issues. So I'm happy to be a part of today's conversation. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to having your perspective here, bringing in that kind of law side of things. So going to be really great once we get into the conversation. Next up, my pleasure to introduce Jenny Hedderman. Jenny is a risk counsel from the Office of the Comptroller in Massachusetts. Her specialty is state finance law compliance and risk management, including cybersecurity and internal controls, accounting, and financial reporting. Turning the mic over to Jenny for opening remarks.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Spencer. Such a great room. Glad to be back again. Hopefully bringing kind of a cross-sectional view, both from a legal point of view on protecting privacy, which is one of the things I do in my role, but also the role that internal controls, which is basically your business controls, have to leverage a lot of the tools that you have already, like technology and process, to merge those with the protection of privacy, which is really what we should be doing, a more holistic approach instead of just kind of a one-shot deal. So very happy to be part of this conversation. Jenny out.
Amazing. Next up, I'd like to introduce Travis Tran. Travis is a senior manager at Amex, where he leads data strategy efforts in global strategy and capabilities. Before, he led efforts at JP Morgan relating to investment banking, payment, machine learning, security, spatial analytics, robotics, and the industry's first autonomous drone programs. Travis is a U.S. Army veteran and a graduate of Columbia University and a graduate engineering candidate at Oxford University. Travis, passing the mic over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Spencer. I'm very excited to be joining this panel, and actually a job update. I actually am a senior program manager now at LinkedIn, so I'm at a very exciting, a new chapter here in Silicon Valley, where I'm actually now in charge of a lot of new data governance conversations relating to customer science and everything that is good behind that. I think that we're in a very interesting spot in history, like working with autonomous drones, looking at facial recognition and everything financial services has done over the past decade that I spent in New York City, and now moving over to Silicon Valley. I think that there are a lot of good conversations to be had across different types of industries and companies around the world. And I think, that a lot of that conversation is going on to, of course, one, put members first, at least at LinkedIn. It stands very firmly by, its values, and which is the number one thing, which is putting our members first, treating their data as if it's our own. And of course, looking forward into the future to making sure that as we proceed forward, that our data, our ecosystem, and the way we treat our data remains sustainable going forward. So very excited to be joining this panel. And yeah, that's all I have on this end, Spencer.
Great. Well, we'll have to come back to you to get some more insight into that. That's wonderful. I'm really glad to have you and have your perspective here. Next up, going to be turning the mic over to Craig Talbert. Craig wrote his first line of code at age 6 on BASIC on a computer he purchased from Radio Shack. Ever since, he's been grappling with where computing and humanism have diverged, and he writes about his findings. One piece, available on Less Wrong, compares the work of the founder of Data Dignity, Jaron Lanier, and Glenn Whale to Scott Alexander and E.E. Cummings, respectively. Turning the mic over to Craig for opening remarks, and definitely we'll have to hear about that piece that you wrote because it's very pertinent.
Spencer, thank you. Yeah, compares Jaron Lanier, Glenn Well, Scott Alexander, and Eliezer Yudkowsky. Although there's a introduction with a poem from E.E. Cummings. But thank you. I'm super happy to be here. I'm humbled to be on this panel. I have a lot of experience developing on the internet and seen its evolution, and have went from a Ray Kurzweil kind of singularity camp at one point to a need to refocus the direction of the internet in a way that's more human-centered, and that's what I'm interested in talking about. So I'm happy to be here with all of you. There's some great panelists here.
We're happy you're with us too. Really looking forward to the conversation. Next up, I'd like to pass the mic over to Jeff Klein. It's fair to say that Jeff is a nonprofit professional interested in the connection between income and health, which has led him to explore how to track the two together using a data platform. This led him to thinking deeply about data sovereignty, portability, interoperability, and equity. Turning the mic over to Jeff for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Spencer. Hi, everybody. It is really great to be here and to be invited. This is my first Clubhouse participatory event, and I haven't been on here in a while, as I can tell from my COVID lockdown mohawk in my picture, which is shocking to see. So yeah, my angle on this is from the nonprofit perspective. I definitely think a lot about the most vulnerable folks out there, people in shelter systems, people in treatment programs, people in food programs, and how their data is used, and how a focus on data sovereignty and portability might impact their lives in different ways. So really interested in what other folks have to say. And yeah, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to have you. Next up, going to be turning it over to Shefali Girish. At the Aapti Institute in India, Shefali has worked on analyzing various models of data stewardship, initiatives, and conducted research on installing consultation processes for data protection authorities. Turning the mic over to Shefali for opening remarks. And also, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Thank you, Spencer. Yeah, you're pronouncing it right. I'm excited to be joining this panel. This is my first time here. And I think my perspective in this would be to uh, we research on like models that enable democratic and human-centered data governance. So I'm interested in understanding and exploring how we can balance the protection of privacy and data rights of individuals and communities at the same time enabling data sharing and enabling or unlocking the value of data for the benefit of the society. So yeah.
We're really glad to have you on the panel. Really looking forward to hearing more about your work and hearing more about your perspective. Next up, I'd like to turn it over to Victor Zelo-Qualticat. Victor did a master's in business analytics at the University of Kansas. He'll be moving to Austin later next month to work as a business consultant where he intends to influence institutions to prioritize human and environmental well-being. He has a strong interest in data and has written a piece on data dignity, data unions, and data marketplaces. Turning the mic over to Victor for his opening remarks.
Hi there. Yes, I'm Victor Salocualtecatl, and thank you very much for creating the space to discuss this very current issue that influences how society will evolve in future years. I am very excited to hear everyone's thoughts and share my own as well. My approach for data dignity comes as a person that is just joining the workforce, but is very passionate about how new business models can be created and can be implemented to reduce the effects that we are seeing as the things are right now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, we're very excited to have you on the panel. Last up, I'd like to turn the mic over to Alice Rathjen. Alice is one of the early pioneers of computational biology and spatial analysis of genomes. She's been a serial entrepreneur in genomics for nearly 2 decades, having launched Dominga, the first direct-to-consumer genetic testing service in 2000, and DNA Guide, the first genome browser for mobile platforms in 2009. Alice, really glad you're back. Turning the mic over to you for opening remarks.
Oh, thank you. So our current focus is to try to get this, the Eleanor genome protocol developed, and it involves reusing Earth mapping infrastructure to build out local regional genomic capacity so that there's actual technical foundation for communities to start having data sovereignty. And with that, I look forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Well, big round of applause to everyone who made it, came on the panel. We're really looking forward to this conversation. And I think an important place to start is kind of the underlying definition of data dignity, because I think given that all of us come from such a diverse background and yet we kind of share on this common thread, thinking about data dignity from our various perspectives, might have wanted to do this for opening remarks, but I'd love to go back around the room and just kind of understand how data dignity and data sovereignty and the data economy as a whole plays a role in your perspective for your various jobs, various lifestyles. Because I think it's really important to acknowledge that this issue is so widespread and it's so complex. And if we are going to have conversations about it, it's important to bring on as many perspectives as we possibly can. We have health, we have industry, we have policy, we have law. So I'd really love to kind of go around the room one more time, if you guys will indulge me, and kind of talk about how data dignity really plays a role in your perspective, whether it's job or whether it's personal. And I'm just going to be going in the order of who I see on my screen first. So Jeff, love to turn it over to you and kind of hear about it in the nonprofit space.
Yeah, sure. So I You mentioned it a little bit in the introduction, but I've worked in the financial health space, running financial counseling programs for, I guess, since about 2017, 18. And for long story short, when I moved from the States to Canada, I've been trying to make the case for financial counseling as a viable intervention here, and needed a data platform to track financial health and program outcomes. And so I wrote a grant, received funding, and hired some developers to help develop this platform. And they chose to use Power Apps and Lime Survey and a few other tools. And it turns out that decision opened up a world for me that I was not really privy to, because as a nonprofit person, I just sort of go about my business, working at agencies and helping, hire people to do frontline work, that sort of thing. And I'm, interact with shelter systems and food systems and things like that to help with poverty reduction, et cetera, et cetera. But the choice of the software exposed me to concepts like health system interoperability. So FHIR, maybe a lot of people know about that in this clubhouse space, but fast healthcare interoperability resources help health systems communicate across data platforms. And so when we built this platform to FHIR standards, it got me thinking about interoperability in the nonprofit space. And when we convened a group of advisors, we really started talking a lot about data sovereignty and portability. And all those things combined open up possibilities to really transform the nonprofit space from one where, agencies receive funding from, to do work with their clients. Funders work with, Salesforce or Dynamics or have their own CRMs, that they require nonprofits to collect primarily outputs. And nonprofits receive a lot of money. I mean, it's a huge industry, the nonprofit industry, for just producing outputs. Like, how many people have you worked with? How long were they in care? So there's this whole industry that's built around just reporting outputs, and no one thinks about the end user, the client who's in the shelter or who's going from agency to agency, and their data is being used to support this industry, where executive directors get paid, frontline staff get paid, people at these software companies get paid, funders receive, governments provide money to intermediaries to pass through. So this idea of putting the data in the hands of the end user and democratizing the process, and nonprofits sort of catching up with where the private sector and the healthcare sector are with interoperability and portability and sovereignty are, it's just super interesting to me. So that's my angle and where I'm coming from here. I don't know if that all that made sense, but I'll stop talking and see what people think.
I think you made sense. And Spencer, I'm going to push it over to Trace. I only see TRA. Travis, do you want to go next?
Yes, absolutely. So this is my first panel, so I'll just start from the very top here. But essentially, like, my take on this topic is basically, when I've been on the innovation side for the past decade, and by that I worked for Fortune 500 companies like JP Morgan, American Express, and now LinkedIn, which is part of Microsoft, all of which has big data. And originally, I didn't actually go dive into the data world. I was kind of pulled into it out of necessity because while I was looking at using things like autonomous drones to protect employees and actually perform security tasks, or looking at things like the famous Smart.ai facial recognition internet scraping technology, which I know the CEO quite well. It is kind of like the opposite of what this panel stands for. But I'm learning more about like facial recognition, internet scraping in the case of crime prevention, and of course, moving over to the investment bank to actually see basically how accounts are managed, and then moving on into the tagging space and stuff. One thing that I have realized is that it's very important to have very strong values along different departments, different teams, and a lot of big organizations that that a lot of people look up to today seem to lack basic data governance. And so one of my basic go-to framework when I go into a new company nowadays is inside my toolbox is basically a list of questions, and then the questions is like, hey, what data ecosystems and nodes exist, and is there data governance behind that? What goals is it that the department is trying to basically fulfill? And beyond that, when we do innovate, trying to, of course, get product managers and various different thinkers, and I've been on the product management side myself, to basically ask those same questions and think along those same frameworks. Are we doing right by our customers? And is our new platform sustainable in the cases relating to like PII or like GDPR? Or would it, in the long run, and this is from the business standpoint, it would be expensive if regulatory changes do happen? Would it actually end up costing billions of dollars for us to overhaul customer data and stuff along that line? I think that a lot of big companies, surprisingly, operate like the Wild West right now. I think that in the financial services industry, a lot changed during, of course, the Dodd-Frank generation and CCAR and DFAST, which actually made a lot of change happen, and GDPR actually took it to a new level. But I think that there are new things around the horizon, and I think the smart thing to do for businesses is to, one, have good data governance that is full of people and leaders that do believe in doing right by our customers and being up to date with what's going on within the industry in terms of data. And two, of course, have a central guiding North Star, which is always doing right by our customers. So hopefully that provides some insight within the for-profit industry. But that's all I have on my end, unless if there's any more questions.
Craig, you want to go next? And Travis, I think I'm taking notes and considering what you're saying as we moderate through. So Craig, any thoughts?
Sure. Let me explain a little bit of my background. So, having been a technologist, a developer for a very long time, having been on the internet and then things preceded the internet, like FidoNet, if you're familiar, Usenet, those kinds of things. The trajectory I've seen has been a continuing inversion of the human-computer relationship, and I want to explain what I mean by that. I think the best example is a story Steve Jobs used to tell. So he says, when he was a child, he was reading a textbook once, and this textbook had a chart, some data saying, if you were to look at animals across the planet and say, how efficient are they at traversing distance, in terms of calories spent, right? Which animals do the best? And humans do really well. We do better than mice. We do better than a lot of other animals. But on that chart, if you look, birds, I think the condor was the best one, are the ones that are the best at traveling a distance using the fewest amount of calories. But then if you were to take that chart and you would have put a human on a bicycle, we blow everything else out of the water, right? We're much more efficient than every other animal on the planet when we're riding a bicycle at going however many distances using calories. And his idea there was that computers should be like bicycles for your brain, right? So these should be things that make you more efficient, make you better at doing your job, make you more creative. Maybe another way to think about it is thinking of a computer as sort of like a musical instrument. It's a way to express yourself in creative ways, in ways that allow you to make money, in ways that allow you to enjoy your time more on Earth, right? What I've seen much more with Facebook, Twitter, other forms of social media is that computers become these things that make you addicted, right? They take away your opportunities for creative expression. When you have a Facebook profile, you try and put everything in this very standardized form. You have your links, your bio, your profile. Clubhouse is guilty of this too, but I'll give them a pass for this conversation. Compared to the earlier parts of the web where, yes, there was some standardization, but on your own website, you had freedom to do whatever you wanted to do. You didn't have to be a profile picture. You didn't have to be, a list of hobbies and interests and bands and music and those kinds of things. You had this free canvas of creative expression. What I want to add, what I want to do is sort of reclaim a little bit of what's been lost in this computing inversion. Take computing back to the way I remembered it, where computers are more like tools, more like instruments, more like things that accelerate you, and also give people opportunities to get paid for this effort. If you go far enough back in the history of computing, there was a man named Ted Nelson, and he had this idea of micropayments. So everything that would go on the internet would have a person associated with this, and if this was shared or reused or experienced or listened to, there was a way for people to collect royalties on this information. So a lot of what people talk about is yes, like our the data that we generate now, that we generate passively, this generates something like $20,000 a year in wealth. But the opportunity that we're missing there is not a lot of people who are just generating that $20,000 a year now are deliberately going out and trying to share the creative products of their mind with everyone else. And the economy and the wealth that could be created if we said, hey, we've now created a version of the internet where you can profit off your own creativity in a way that you haven't been able to before, because you don't need to play to AdWords or I'm going to write this outrageous article because I know that this is going to get the most clicks, right? You have a way of having a more direct relationship with your audience, such that you don't have to trick or enrage them. You can build something that's genuinely more creative and ideally make a living off something like that. So that's where my interest in the space comes from, is kind of, I don't know, nostalgia for the old areas of computing, and then also being able to augment that with newer, call it Web3 technology if you would like, to make that more profitable for people. I'm really excited about the work that that people are doing in this, other founders, hope they'll get the name right, Consuli, are doing here to help enable that in the healthcare space and other spaces. So I hope I can inspire you. But thanks. Yeah, that's Craig. I'm
Thanks,
out.
Craig. And I just want to say really quick, I like your analogy around music, because data is something that a lot of people don't understand, right? And if you can put it into terms that they do, it's easier to get them to understand. So I always like to say my data is my song. And if you want to play my music, there's royalties to be paid.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's something to think about. But Spencer, do you want to tell us your thoughts on
Yeah.
what?
I just wanted
Go
to
for it.
chime in and say that I thought it was really interesting that you're talking about using Web3 to kind of go back to the nostalgic age of computing. Just something about that is ringing so, I don't know, so interesting. It's just a really interesting concept that I've never really heard brought up before, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. But that being said, I want to pass it to Amin, who might have a perspective, the kind of Web3 perspective, and might be able to elaborate more.
And also what data dignity means to him, Spencer. That was our original question.
No, I absolutely. I'll make sure and keep a brief definition on that. I would normally consider data dignity on my behalf as just the ownership of data. I mean, I would say, data as property, and be able to have, really, really self-confidence on that front. And I just think I would think back again with what Craig has been talking about, especially with this nostalgic feeling of how, how Web3 is kind of bringing us back to like the original principles of what made the internet much so intuitive, and the importance of how our data has created these intuitive experiences and reframing our human connection on how we relate things and create culture collectively on that front. And I take account of, like, especially what Travis took on, like, on the regulatory side, and where where regulators are trying to come into play to ensure that the environment of data dignity is still enforced. I mean, whether it's the GDPR, whether it's the California's Privacy Rights Act, and having to attempt to redefine new rules on ensuring integrity is in place. And I think the problem right now at the moment is that tech firms are still move much faster than governments, and often operate in spaces in which they have a significant information advantage over regulators. Even as awareness of data dignity builds, big tech is still remaining free to track our movements, gather information about us, and sell those insights as whatever they wish. But I feel like a tide of the turn is coming into play as Web3 is becoming a lot more prevalent. And I'm making actually a talk at NFT NYC on essentially about token economic design and the importance of securing data as we interact with applications going forward on that front. And I think we need to turn our awareness into collective action. And I think just the communities that are being built at a protocol level enable us to help create an infrastructure for a much more ethical internet where privacy standards are built in. And it's up to us to recapture the initial promise of the internet and allow more inclusivity of us to trust trust in ways that we can interact, co-create, and exist in a digital world where our data is still intact. And I think a lot of that is a lot of work is being held on the way as we are, like, especially everywhere in a bear market with in terms of dynamics with Web3 right now. But a lot of the builders I've sensed are now coming into a place to help facilitate and put those foundations in place in a more pragmatic manner. So I really think data dignity, especially in the Web3 space, is going to continue to push that and apply those principles in a much meaningful manner that also has an honest assessment on where governance and regulators come in line on that front as well.
Really
I
interesting
lost.
perspective.
I was going to say I lost my room, so I couldn't see who was next. It is an interesting perspective, and I think they all combine in certain ways. But I'd love to hear the rest of our panel too. Spencer, do you want to? I don't see who's
Yeah, sure.
next.
So next on my screen is going to be Mitch, but I'd like to kind of combo Mitch and Jenny together, just because I think that they have a very similar perspective coming from, like, the law side of things. So going to pass it over to Mitch and then Jenny afterwards.
Oh, thank you, Spencer. And Jenny, jump in, unmute if I say something that you don't agree with or you want to add to. Absolutely. So I think from a legal perspective, what's interesting when we talk about data dignity is that's something that law firms and lawyers have been required to have an emphasis on, since day one. The attorney-client privilege, protected communications. When can we disclose what a client shares with us? What are the procedures and steps? And I bring that up because I see the same concepts and approaches apply across most industries, specifically the medical industry when it comes to HIPAA and things like that. The challenge I see is that human error, human manipulation, it's so easy for anyone to get around the privacy issues with respect to digital signatures that aren't really being executed by the person who should be signing the document. In a virtual platform is the avatar that's giving oral consent for the disclosure of some type of privacy. Is it really the person you think you're engaging with on behalf of a company, or is it somebody that's using a deep fake to manipulate consent? And what I do see happening, though, just wrapping up things, is that with Web3, with the blockchain and smart contracts, with AI, all of these things working together, I actually see the protective qualities of data dignity, of the ability of human beings to be in charge of their data, whether they're sharing it for purposes of science and medicine, whether they're disclosing information for personal profit, or whatever the appropriate final game plan is. I see these new technologies as actually being a bit more secure in making sure that the meeting of the minds of all the parties involved is respected, is protected, and is accountable when it comes to follow-up review after something happens. You go back to the blockchain, and the hash is there as to what did or didn't happen. So it's an interesting transition moving forward, but I would encourage everybody. I think the weak link in the solution to data dignity happens to be human beings, and it happens to be front office staff. It happens to be busy professionals that are, multitasking a million things at once, just like I am right now while I'm here in Clubhouse. I'm working on some files and clicking on a link or giving somebody consent when we shouldn't. And I think that's the weak link moving forward in 2022, especially when you add the Web3 components.
And
Was
this is
it Jen
Jenny.
that we were? Go ahead, Jen. Was it you that we were waiting
No,
for?
I think I was just gonna follow up with that. I think that's just an excellent summation of it. I have a slightly different perspective to bring in on top of that with both the legal and the business. I think that you have to kind of think back to how we got here in order to understand where we go from here. But several decades ago, and I've been in state government for 3 decades, so I've seen a huge shift in this. So normally it was the mission or your service was the focus, and data was just a component of that. It was not a primary part of it. It was included in it, but it wasn't the primary part. But then over the past couple of decades, technology has been kind of infused into government and all businesses for efficiency purposes, to make it faster and better and more efficient for the humans to do the work and to provide the mission and the services. And then data was elevated into priority without any standards because it was a necessary component of building technology into that mission. And then now technology is solely dependent on data in order to function. And technology is being built a lot of times not even thinking about two things, which is data dignity and where that data comes from and what to do with that data. So the data governance. And the second part is security. Because anything of value, and now data has been commoditized so that it has value, criminals are going to be looking for. So people haven't been thinking that if there's something of value, somebody wants to steal it from us. And technology and businesses really have not been built to understand that they've been creating this value for several decades. And now the criminals have caught wind of that. And now they're trying to either disrupt it, destroy it, or steal it because now they can monetize that data. So I think that's the quagmire that we're in, and that all of these data breaches that have been happening globally over the past 5 to 10 years have been shots over the bow saying, look, you've been building all these industries based on data without any standards, and we're coming after you. And then aside from that, the people who have the data have been hurt in this process. So people are now paying attention to the value of the data, not to the industries that have been created and are reliant on it, but the people that are involved, either directly or indirectly, because that data is being misused. So I think we're at a perfect storm now where all of these security and data integrity concerns are now starting to merge. And I think what the goals that we're starting to see, at least in government, is that you have to focus on both. You have to focus on the source of the data and who owns it and what the value of the data is. And then the secondary part is how to protect it. And that's not only what Mitch was saying, which is the front office staff and the people who are doing it, but also the technology that's being used and being developed and where you're storing it, like in the cloud. So I think we're really seeing the shift now where there's a responsibility that's being expected, both from the public and from the people who have the data, that security is going to be included in that. And that's why I think there's more attention being paid to data and data ownership and data governance and cybersecurity, and why they really can't be talked about separately. So I think that's where I see a lot of this going, and really focusing on both technology and data integrity really are going to be the way that we can kind of build build this process forward.
30-second follow-up real quick to Jenny. Spot on. It's the money. And one of the advantages of being an attorney, and Jenny will tell you this, is that we get the calls from clients regarding these problems. Oftentimes they never become public. One of the reasons is that established companies, the CEOs may understand that they need to update their data security to accommodate everything Jenny just said, but they can't justify the cost or rationale to their shareholders on a quarterly basis, or they don't want that security limitation to become publicly disclosed. And so it is the perfect storm. We've got data never being more valuable. We've got the consumer most consumers now are starting to appreciate the need to protect their data. You've got large companies with all of this data that's just exposed right now with this archaic technology. I mean, 95% of these Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies are not ready if the right hacker wants to go after them for the data. And it costs money to improve all of this, which then takes away from bottom line profits, which is what shareholders are looking at. And if you don't make those quarterlies, then you know what? You might be out of a job as a CEO. So it's the perfect storm. I don't know what the answer is, but Jenny, I'm glad you brought up that aspect because it's critically important.
You touched on a perfect thing there, Mitch, and that was profit. But I want to hear what Shefali has to say, and then we still have Heather, Victor, and Alice too. Really, I guess your thoughts, Shefali, on what's been said and your idea of data dignity.
Yeah, so my perspective on data dignity is that it's a little bit different when I look at ownership of data, is that I believe that you need to have a rights based approach of which is a more ideal way to reclaim control over data than attaching property rights, because I think the notion is that data is tied to individuals and communities, and that they should have rights over the value generated by the data, and that people need to be empowered to control their data in a better manner so that they can benefit from the value of the data that they generate. And it's a much more comprehensive system of protection, I feel, because ownership because these rights continue to exist even after you share your data with others. So I think, and the solution to this is something that we have been researching at Aapti, is the idea of data stewards or data intermediaries, which act like neutral intermediary bodies that have that think through data governance and have rights and implement safeguards, ensure that they ensure you create opportunities for individuals and communities to participate in the decision making process in their own data governance and hold processors accountable. And and this is something that we see is an evolving approach even in the legal system. For instance, the EU basically came up with the Data Governance Act, which also has provisions for data intermediaries who are supposed to be responsible for handling the sharing of data, and they have to commit to uh, uh, protection of privacy of individuals' data, and they have to be neutral and uphold trust and all of that. So I think that we need to really understand the importance of acknowledging that individuals and communities have rights over the value that's generated. And I think that data intermediaries or data stewards in particular would solve issues that both Mitch and Jenny also spoke about uh, on human error being the weak link, or on having on how to protect privacy and security and having governance mechanisms, and also Jenny spoke on the value of data to the people involved. So I think that's a possible solution to ensuring that.
I love those solutions, and I want to move over to you, Heather. But I want to touch really quick on something that you said about ownership. And sorry, there's a helicopter flying above me. But in the patient communities, there's a big debate on ownership versus digital rights to our data. And there's a concern that if you own the data, you could potentially then sell off the rights to your data. So to protect people instead with some sort of right to that digital data. So I just wanted to to kind of clarify too, and just note that, we're all in different areas here and we may be saying the same things, but the language is always different in just a little bit that might make a huge difference to another part of this. So I don't know the thoughts on you guys on the ownership and all of that, but Heather, I'd love to get your thoughts so far, any comments, and then your idea around digital dignity. And then Victor, you can go next.
Sure. I also saw Alice come off mute, so I wanted to know if Alice
Oh,
had
yeah.
something to say immediately.
Okay. Well, I just say quickly, I think we want to solve this on a global basis, and the question is how high up on the web do we address it? And I think what's missing right now is we have fragmented data sets for human beings. We don't have a protocol for a human being existing online. So there'll be some sort of threshold once a data set is re-identifiable, and that represents a digital human being legally, and that you can't sell a human being. A human being is something that has dynamic consent. So this notion of creating smart contracts and somehow that you've got digital assets that can be kept. No, all these, anything uniquely identifiable can be audited, reassociated with an individual, and have them reestablish their consent preferences for it. So I think, and then we're going to see countries assert their rights over the population health data. So the US has a lot of problems unique to itself in the monetization of de-identified data, but all those companies dependent on monetizing de-identified data are not, they're going to run into problems and have the rug pulled out from them globally. It's just a matter of time.
And that idea of de-identified, whatever, I can't
Yeah.
right now. I think when patient communities start to find out that that isn't true, that's also going to lead to more mistrust in our healthcare system. So it's something to discuss as we move forward.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll have an evolution of digital human rights and some sort of concept of this is a human being on the web, and that their data, what they say, takes precedence over a toaster, for example, in a disaster. And we're going to design the web so that it preserves human life, that's its primary purpose, is saving life and alleviating human suffering, and that takes precedence over economic activity.
And I want to make sure that my digital twin has just as good of a life, if not better, right? And is protected, because I know that there's that potential to do testing on a digital twin and all of these things. So those basic human rights for our digital twins, I think, are going to be a huge topic. But Heather, did you want to go
Oh,
ahead, and then
oh yeah.
Victor?
I have so many thoughts. There have been so many good things said today. And just like starting with what you just said about a digital twin, I see it more of like, this is my digital identity moving around a digital infrastructure. And this is where digital dignity really matters to me, is that I should have the same rights and protections from a human rights standpoint in a digital space where I exist, just as I do when I'm away from my keyboard. So to me, at these days, those of us who interact online, like everybody in this clubhouse room, our lives are basically inseparable from our digital lives. So they are one and the same. And I think part of the danger in communicating these things is actually, for especially for people trying to understand them, is saying that they're separate, or using language that would give the idea that they're separate lives or they're separate things when they're not. It is absolutely, it's our song, as you said, but it is us. It's still our identity. It's just a different version of it, that isn't necessarily as tangible as what we're used to interacting with in, our away from keyboard lives, or when we put our phone down, we're actually talking to someone face to face. I also think that it's important to understand that one of the reasons why we have to have these kinds of conversations is that, well, Alice, I absolutely agree with you that there are human rights. There needs to be like a universal bill of human rights in a digital space. That there are a lot of quote unquote bad actors, or authoritarian desires that would seek to sell humans and seek to sell their data or seek to control them. And that if we talk about it as humans can't be sold, humans can be sold. And currently our identity and our existence is being sold online without us having, generally speaking, us as society, having much understanding of what that means or what that looks like or how we can even get involved. And we do have several regulations globally. I know the CPRA was already brought up, and GDPR is always popular to bring up. I think that the DSA, which is the Digital Services Act, is a little bit more progressive, but it's still a bit behind the curve where we're at. I am really concerned about the issues of digital dignity, especially relating to issues of misinformation and radicalization, and the human digital connection that kind of pulls at our fabric of society and how we connect with each other and how we then get disconnected from each other. So I, I like think that it's also worth saying that, the amount of data we're producing is something that is also really hard to wrap our heads around. So when we're talking about creating a way for us to have data sovereignty, even understanding that it's globally in 2021, we as global digital citizens created 79 zettabytes of data. And that's 79 with 21 zeros after it. And that's such an unfathomable amount. Like we're largely an enumerate species who are not very good at understanding extremely large numbers like that. And a large portion of that data is also just kind of dark data just sitting around, not even really being used. And then the portion that is being used is largely being used in advertising and marketing capabilities. And that's where we also end up with a lot of the misinformation or manipulation or control that comes in. And you see political campaigns and entities that don't have corporate interests using marketing tools to be able to sway people and their belief systems. So this is why we totally need to be having these conversations. And I see that, Craig, you keep coming off of mute, so I feel like you have something you want to say.
Oh, sorry. I've wanted to jump in at various points in times, but please don't let me derail your thoughts there.
No,
I'm
I'm at a good stopping point right there. I could keep going on like longer. Like so much has already been covered, but I just wanted to like mention a couple things about like this is this is a vital issue, because if we don't talk about it with a sense of urgency, then it's too easily manipulated because
And
of the level of digital illiteracy that exists, and that it's such a huge feat that we're even trying to like wrap our brains around as people who are informed on these subjects, that it's so much bigger than any one of us can really wrap our arms around.
I think we have to talk about this before it's taken advantage of, and not try to fight for it later. But Craig, did you
sure.
have a comment? And then we'll move back to Victor. Sorry, Victor, it's taking so long to get to you. And Alice again.
Oh,
But
yeah. I'm sorry if I didn't mean to. I haven't been keeping track of everyone who's introduced themselves, but I guess I just wanted to first just notice that I'm glad that everyone in here seems to be on the same page. It sounds like we all appreciate the value of data dignity in one form or another, and what most of us are concerned about are the 201 kind of things, where we all realize this is very important, and we realize that we need legal frameworks, or we need what Jaren and Glenn have called MIDs, mediators of individual data, people who act on behalf of data creators. You could think of it as sort of like a union or a record label or something like that. And I just, the extent that we can probably start talking about that now and leverage this conversation as to here are the brass tacks of how we want to create this system, but we don't want things to be abused in the process of creating it. Just as a general observation, usually every time someone attempts to solve a problem, there's other unintended consequences that you didn't think of. So yeah, just throwing it out there that I appreciate all these attempts at forward-thinking discussion in terms of how we actually solve the difficult problems, now that we realize that the difficult implementation problems, now that we all realize that there's
that they're there.
this gap. Yes, exactly.
Victor, you want to finally tell us your thoughts again around, the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just here enjoying everyone's thoughts, and so I there's not a problem. To me, data dignity refers to the rights that we would hope to have over our data. And of course, it implies the ability to exercise those rights, which at this point it's very difficult because the infrastructure is not in place, the systems are not in place, and the entire economy was not designed to accommodate this new concept. So my following opinion is more of it's more coming from the consumer side point. Data dignity I think that it plays a role everywhere where humans interact with technology. However, I think that we need to stop data collection just for the sake of data collection. It's a little hard to know when we'll need something, and perhaps that's why companies tend to capture a lot of information that they don't know what will they need. For instance, as I was looking for apartments in Austin, it was very interesting to see how many websites wanted me to share my information. So I thought, I am not going to do that. I'd rather not, and I'm going to just call. I'm just going to call directly to the agents over there, so I don't have to turn in my email and my name and all that kind of thing. However, once I was on the phone with them, they started to I guess they're required to get that information too. I don't know, but every time I talk to someone, they'll be like, okay, what's your name? What's your this? What's your that? So they would pretty much get the information that they wanted to get. So naturally, after that interaction, I would start bombarded with emails and text messages just telling me how awesome that property is. But I don't want to be influenced by that. So it's very difficult to not be influenced just by being being on the internet. Then when I was talking with a friend and told me about this, he was like, Victor, you need to chill. I think you're being too much. So it got me thinking, at what extent we've normalized data sharing that is no longer a problem for many, and many are completely unaware of what is happening to their information. And it's just too intrusive. It's too intrusive. Someone mentioned it moments ago that we need to look at computers and information as tools, versus now there are these machines that are extracting every bit of human behavior. That's what made me pretty much delete or get out of social media and be mindful also about search engines that are everywhere. So it makes me uncomfortable knowing that my information is being used to do something that I'm completely unaware of, and that I have no control over. Because once I send it in, I don't know where that information is going. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know how long that's going to be used. But it's not about just me or just about one person, but rather the impact of everyone's aggregated data and the information we can learn from that information, from that data. So just to summarize it, we need the infrastructure, we need the systems, and we need the products to allow our data to be used responsibly and give consumers the agency to do what they want with it. Because right now it feels consumers are not given the choice to make those decisions, even though there may be consumers, and I include myself, that we would like to make those decisions, but it's just not possible because we don't have the tools to do that.
Thank you, Victor. So before Alice, I go to you, I want to say as a patient in my idea of data dignity, and I want to first go back to the actual definition of dignity. And it is state or quality of being worth honor or respect. And for me as a patient, I've been on many different sides, including a lot of meetings I probably shouldn't have been at. And I can tell you there is no dignity in illness. And so I live on Social Security disability. I've talked to economists who say that data is the new soil, right? It's a chance to even the playing fields if we would give patients, or people that ownership or digital rights or whatever we want to call it over our data. But where I am at and where I'm sitting at some of these meetings, these decisions are already being made before any patient or any person gets involved. And so I don't know how to solve that. But I don't know. I just don't think there's much dignity in it right now. But Alice, you want to take it from here?
Oh, there's certain mechanisms in the U.S. market for fixing this, and one is the liability of the data. So you'll have an instance, let's say, like the All of Us Research Initiative, where they're not making the raw genomes readily accessible to patients who could then share those as a JSON web service on a fully open API to the research community more broadly. And it's a matter of time before there's a group of patients that will be able to exhibit that they were harmed by the current data policies. And that liability in those class action lawsuits are what's going to bring about change. And unfortunately, it's a slow process, but it's inevitable. And with that, I'll close.
Wow. So, anyone have any comments from there? You can, Spencer, anything here? Do you want to comment because you've been quiet for a while?
Yeah, I can share a little bit about my perspective on the issue. I know that
And then I think Matt is joining the stage if I did that right. So after you're done, if Matt ever gets up here. But go ahead, Spencer.
I was just gonna say, I know we talked a little bit about like data as property versus data as rights versus data as labor, which is like another methodology of thinking about it. And I think it's really important to go back to this concept of like community-based data sharing models, and thinking about how we can all kind of elevate each other in these spaces and kind of creating nodes of people that are all pooling their data together to kind of get that worth out of it. I know that one thing that gets brought up a lot is, if tomorrow suddenly everyone had, um, rights over their data and were compensated for their data, then the price would go to zero because you can't negotiate against some of these tech giants. And I think acknowledging the importance of community sharing and kind of having agents and almost like data brokers for you is just something to think about. And also, kind of in thinking about data as a form of compensation, brings up this idea of universal basic income, which I think is really interesting, especially in the rare disease communities where data is worth a lot and
And you may never
it's
be
being,
able to work.
yeah, and it's being stripped away.
Mhm.
And the unfortunate truth is, while we're here kind of talking about these issues, and deciding what the best, metric, what the best system, what the best format is, our data is being literally stripped away from us kind of as we speak. And so the more time spent and it's important to have these conversations, and it's important to get a model that works and a model that's multidisciplinary and brings in all these perspectives, because it's so important. But the time spent arguing is the time spent having our rights stripped away.
Right. We keep losing it as we speak. Matt, the dog, it's been a long time.
Hello.
What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this question, but is it possible that us as individuals, consumers, data, what do we call it? Data, we are data suppliers, for lack of a better term. I don't know what that means, but
Makes
is
sense.
it possible? Is it possible that all of the goods, the services, and everything else in I'm using the word economy for lack of a better term, but broadly in our life, all that data that we have supplied out there is it's already is it already priced in to the goods and services and world that we live in today? Is it the price of doing business at the price in which we have already that we are already living in? Meaning, are we already getting quote unquote compensated? Is that already priced in? And I'm just
Matt, you know what's funny is when I was in high school, they used to have people, the market
yep,
surveyors that were in the mall, and they would make you sit down with them for a half hour of your time, and they give you
sure,
$150.
sure.
Now, to get to the next page on a website, I have to give you that information for free.
Right, right, right. But even in things that we don't consider, like, so for example, and again, this is half devil's advocate to what I'm hearing in the room, but just something that I don't know what the answer is I work in healthcare. And so, and I work in big healthcare, for a plan, and we use our data all the time to essentially, for our purposes as a plan, to lower costs. Because if we can lower costs on claims we pay out, it also by de facto lowers the cost that members pay. And I'm not advocating, I get all the reasons why health plans are bad, and I'm here wearing my bulletproof vest a little bit, but prices are going up, but maybe at a rate that it wouldn't go up if we did not have that data to help drive it down. So I guess that's just one anecdote. I guess my point is, right, the broader question that I'll just reiterate and then get back to the room is are we already priced in various industries the fact that our data is out there for consumption?
That's a great question, Matt, and I always love hearing your perspective. And I want to talk to you later, so reach
Sure.
out. Um, Anyone in the room have any comments on Matt's question there? Go
I
ahead
do.
and unmute.
This is Mitch. I've got to. I messaged you, Christine and Spencer. I do have to jump on a Zoom with the court. I had 1 hour allocated, but Matt, to answer your question, I don't think so. I think we're just getting started. I think the challenges and issues and concerns most of us have, we're looking at the tip of the iceberg. I shared a tweet probably about a half hour ago on my Twitter feed at Mitch Jackson, and it talks about an article that relates to human privacy but through DNA theft. And it's called Courts Aren't Ready to Confront the Legal Quagmire of DNA Theft. And it references the meeting between the French president and Putin in Moscow, with the French president refusing to take a COVID test, a Russian COVID test, which, people are speculating is because he didn't want Russia to have access to his DNA. And everything that we do each and every day, and we have corporate executives reaching out to us about this kind of stuff, potentially results in DNA being left on a conference table, on a piece of glass, on a coffee cup, on a desktop, on a keyboard. And if this DNA is processed and digitalized and then converted into the type of data that we're talking about today, so it's not, really human. It's not. It's a different type of data that we're leaving behind everywhere we go. Right? It
Sure,
creates
sure.
it creates even new problems. And so that's why I say we're at the tip of the iceberg, and it'll be interesting to see how different local, national, and global organizations create new ways, new methods to test, to monitor, to protect this type of data.
Sure.
So I just wanted to share that with everyone because I think it's an interesting topic. I do have to bolt. I appreciate being part of this clubhouse room. And if anyone would like to follow up, I'm available. I love this stuff.
Great, thank you for your
Thanks for coming by.
perspective.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Mitch.
and we brought two other people to this stage, Spencer.
Really quick,
And we have a couple, like 15, 14, 13 minutes left. So Sharath, I hope I said that right. Do you want to give your thoughts quickly?
Yeah, sure. So, I just popped in and it's an interesting topic. I love this topic. Just one thought that came to my head when you were talking about negotiation power, right? I think if we go upstream, and when I talk about upstream in the clinical trial phase, a lot of companies at that stage really need data. And if we were to disintermediate and allow these companies to directly recruit, and maybe that would be based on, for example, if someone had a condition that the clinical trial was being conducted for, And I think there is a clear caveat there where the person needs to understand the risks, etc., which is, I think, the tricky bit. But once that is taken care of, the data can then flow to the person or the people who need it, and the person who benefits from it directly can actually benefit from it. So I don't know if there are mechanisms like that in place already. From what I understand, there isn't, but that's, I think, a clear place where there can be, at least in a limited way, some sort of benefit accruing to the common person rather than the intermediaries. Just a thought, but I thought I'll bring it up to the room
No,
and see if I was right or
I
that.
like the thought, and we actually have groups, but I think, Alice will tell you this over and over again too, is our patient advocacy groups too also need to organize themselves, and be able to hold that data for their communities and to make those decisions. And it's hard to bring people together when there's fight for profits and, all of these different things, and communities divided. And so it's coming. I think it's coming to that point, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But Timothy, your thoughts, and then Alice, I want to get yours one more time. Are you there,
Uh,
Timothy?
yes, I'm here. So, nice discussion. I'm sorry I came in very late. And on the thought of the penultimate speaker about how countries are responding to the monetization of data and the likes, I would just want to. I'm from Nigeria, and I will be giving my perspective based on the jurisdictional practice of data protection in the country at the moment. Even though the framework for data protection is still so much in progress, what regulators are doing in Nigeria basically is to you know form coalitions and joint task force to fight or rather to monitor data usage and monetization, particularly as it relates to new startup. So now, what we have in this in our climb is a framework where we have specific data regulator, the Bureau of Data Protection, and then we now have the various regulators such as the finance regulator, the CBN, the EFCC, the NFIU, all of them coming together to look into to monitor the use of data, different data, including data in the health sector and in the financial sector, to make sure that the entities in those sectors comply with the principal regulation on data in Nigeria. That's currently what we have here, and like you all have been saying, it's interesting to see how um the how we going to and the government are going to leverage on the new dependency on data and how they're going to regulate this space.
Thank you, Timothy. I think it's interesting too, because I think we can make changes in other countries probably faster than we can in the US with the political climate that's here. Alice, before you go, Sandra's on. Sandra, what are your thoughts on this? You're a patient here.
Yes, thank you so much for calling me up. I will not be long. As I'm sitting listening in the audience, I'm hearing quite a few people that have been on the panelists have mentioned the patient, like making sure that the consumer, the patient is involved. Well, as a board certified patient advocate, an independent board certified patient advocate that speaks on behalf of the patients, what I would like to do is to encourage that communication occurs, but instead of it just occurring and just throwing the information out there and hoping that the patient understands it, that someone takes the time to explain it exactly what it is that's happening with their data really quickly. A new change that has just, I mean, it may have been going on a long time, but it's just been brought to the forefront, is the fact that now patients, when they sign on to the electronic health record portal, they're being asked to pay to get the doctor to answer. Only thing is, we don't know who's answering from the other side because they're not identifying themselves. They're just responding on behalf of the facility. So you're opening up our data to more people who we have no idea who these people are. We just know that they work for the health system, and now we have to pay to get. We don't have any recollection of who it is we're paying, what we're paying for. We just know that there's a whole bunch of people that now have access to our records that we're being asked to pay for. This is Sandra. I'm complete. Back to you, Christine.
Thanks, Sandra. I want to say one of the key things here is really educating people around the data, but I also know educating people around the data also cuts into profits. So there has to be some way to negotiate that. Alice, I said I was going to come back to you on your thoughts, and then if anyone wants to hop in after that, Alice, go first. And then I
Oh,
think I saw, if you have something, otherwise I saw Shefali come off.
I'm going to pass and let someone else speak. Thanks, though, Christine.
Okay, Shefali, did you come off mute? We've got about 6 minutes left.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on to Victor's point on how, data sometimes is collected and without any need for that collection. And as everyone mentioned, sometimes patients do not even know the reason why the data is collected, to whom is it sent, the purpose, etc. But I would also like to point out that there are a lot of these collaboratives or cooperatives. Like I could give an example of Citizen, which is a private collaborative platform that does enable individual patients and even patient advocacy groups to share their health information. So it has come up with mechanisms where you consult patients and advocacy groups while you frame partnerships with third parties with whom you uh, share such data, and you allow the patients to kind of decide the terms and purpose of such collaborations, which brings me to the point that you need to have these neutral intermediaries or cooperatives that enable members to deliberate and decide on questions of data sharing and data handling. And there are already existing uh, examples and models that do that. And another thing would want to point out is also like the use of AI. I think what happens sometimes is, especially with community, with groups that are that are obviously vulnerable, like say for instance migrants, they have absolutely no visibility over the data that's been collected by states or private companies. And when you use AI on top of it, which is, say, if an automated AI or an algorithm is used to make decisions on, say, important things like a migrant's application for asylum, then there is no mechanism for accountability or grievance redressals, etc., which is another reason why I think we need to have bodies that imbibe these governance principles to ensure that there is some level of accountability and transparency.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Or Julie, do you want me to toss it over to you? We are at 10:26. If Julie's
I think
around.
I think we should probably go around the room and let everyone get one last word
One
in,
last
final thought.
one last
Obviously,
thought.
I know that we asked for an hour and a half, so if people have to go, we really appreciate you for your time. If you want to stick around and listen to these final thoughts, feel free to do so. But I think one more pass around the room to give final thoughts about the conversation, final thoughts about your perspective, what's next, and then if you feel so inclined, maybe share a little bit about how we can make this room better. We're always trying to look for ways to improve the quality of our production. So if you have an idea, you can say it or just reach out to me. But that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Jeff to start our lightning ending round here.
Thanks. And this was a great conversation. I really appreciated being part of it. Just real quick, I think there are ways to explore where patients or end users or clients can own their own data, take it with them where they go, decide who sees it, who they share it with, and also have people to help them understand what the data is saying about them if we just invest in that. So it's as fast as I could go.
And next, Travis. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I think it was quite delightful listening to every single one of you. I think I learned a thing or two, which is great. One thing that I do always encourage, I mean, especially as we're heading into a very interesting economic times, is that like conversations like these are actually quite important, and I encourage everyone to advocate wherever they're at, whether it's Fortune 500 company or the public sector, et cetera, et cetera. Because to at least my senior leaders, quite frankly, data dignity isn't at the forefront of what keeps them up at night. I think right now goals and quarterly earnings and stuff like that has precedence. But as we're designing new products, and I say this as a person who creates products and features and works on the innovative side, like having these conversations at our workplaces, having things that are built and features that are built, that are surrounded by good values, which include, putting members first, customers first, and patients first, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's very important. And so I'm very excited to continue to, be involved with this and quite frankly, learn more and hopefully, make an impact in the organizations that we each represent.
I love that. Thank you. And Craig, final thoughts?
Hey, thank you. I know I've taken up a lot of time, so I'll try and be quick. But Shefali and Christine and other people who have participated on this, I want to thank you for opening my mind up to some possibilities and things that already exist here. I thought I'd had a lot of thoughts about what it would take to start something like a mid, but I think a lot of people are doing it. And in the cases that you presented here, it's basically identifying a population, say patients who have valuable data, and organizing them and acting on their behalf and negotiating with them, which sounds like or negotiating on their behalf with people who would want that. I think it's a very powerful model, and I'm very impressed with what I've heard here. And thank you for inviting me. And I would like to yield the remainder of the time. Thank you.
Thanks. And then I'm going to skip Spencer and Julie for a minute. Min, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, no, this was a really insightful conversation. I really enjoy getting to hear so many perspectives coming from different backgrounds and factors and that take account of like different variables how we interpret data integrity and data dignity. And I feel there's a lot of coordinated effort in which we find consensus in how we certainly share certain principles, and tying in how our experiences in the digital world should also facilitate more ethical needs for human rights protection, especially like when a good analogy I think of is like gravity, in the sense like we don't necessarily see it, but we feel the significance of how data plays a role in the significance and in our conversations and in our society, and playing the greater culture of all things perspective. It's I think there's a I think that the importance of having more discussions such as this is giving a lot more room for coordinated effort and ensuring that the principles of a better internet are in place, and more importantly, bringing back the ownership of those experiences to the people that make the internet such a very dynamic experience in the first place. So thank you guys again for making this a hospitable place to have this conversation.
I think it'll be interesting as we move into decentralized clinical trials as well as we talk about these things. Spencer, I'm going to pass it over to you because I am at a conference and should get back to you at some point. But can I
Yeah,
leave you with
perfect.
my closing thoughts?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think I think we need to look at, democratizing this and having federated data. I think we're on the edge of a new data economy where we can even this playing field of the, between the rich and the poor, and give people, purpose and quality of life or whatever means something to them back. But yeah, Those are my thoughts. I think we need to look into it. We need to organize people. We need to teach them about the data before they give it away, and really just kind of organize in that way. But those are my closing thoughts. I'm going to go back to the conference and I'll let you take over the rest of the moderating, Spencer.
Yeah, thanks so much. Glad you could make it, and I hope you have a good rest of the conference.
Yeah, and if you record the rest of it, let me know. I'd love to hear how everyone else's closing thoughts.
Yeah, well, it gets recorded on Clubhouse, so it'll be
I'll
available.
listen in.
Yeah.
All right, bye, guys.
Shefali, I'm going to pass it to you for your closing remarks. Might have lost her. Shefali? Going once? Okay, going to pass it to Heather. Maybe Shefali's having some internet troubles. Heather, if you want to state your
Sure,
closing
thank you.
remarks.
Yeah, first of all, I'm just, again, very grateful to be here today. I did uh, definitely learn some things, and I love listening to everybody talk about a subject that we're all so passionate about. And our passion and our desire to communicate these things absolutely makes a difference. So, my closing thoughts and remarks on this are not so much about data dignity in and of itself, but more so for those of us in this room who do care about this to not give up and to keep continuing to communicate these things to the people that we work with, our friends, our family, and finding other creative outlets to be able to get this message out to people and help people build a bridge of understanding so that they can be empowered. And through a community and a network like this, like us, and knowing that there are several thousand people out there who are also like us that I'm at least aware of. It might even be more than that, hopefully. It does make a difference. So, that might seem optimistic and idealistic, but, this is how change starts. It starts with these kinds of conversations, and it starts with us building community and building network and working towards something collectively. So I'm very grateful to be here. I hope that we all continue to maintain our passion and also stay grounded in what our goals and our vision are for the future regarding our digital lives. And thank you again for having me here.
Very wonderful message. Optimistic, but I think we can get there. Shefali, passing it over to you. Unsure if you fixed
Yeah.
your internet. Oh, got
Am
you.
I audible? Uh, am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm really grateful to be part of this panel. Just love listening to various perspectives. But I think, like everyone said, we need to keep the idea of um, understanding how important it is to acknowledge the rights over the value that's generated by data, and the fact that people need to be empowered enough to control their data better. So we need to we need to go through aspects of data literacy, of making people understand the harms of misuse of data, and also come up with governance principles to ensure that there is transparency, there is accountability, that there is enough participation, and that you involve groups of interest to be part of the decision making. And I think there are several organizations in various forms. It could be through data cooperatives that enable members to deliberate and decide on decision making, and members have a vote on the decisions that they make. Or it could be in the form of trust, where they have like a fiduciary duty to uh, act on behalf of the data users and negotiate for them. But like in general, I think it's very important to have governance principles to ensure that that data is not exploited by private companies, or that the purpose of data is known to people who own the data.
Wonderful. Well, we really appreciated having you as well, and hope to see you at the next event. I'm gonna pass it to Jenny for closing remarks.
Sure, thank you. What a great room, Spencer, everybody. It's always nice to see the different perspectives and all being kind of going in the same direction. My final words would be just to, in your own space, in whatever industry that you're in, is to keep up the education in your organization, in your families, in your community, just to raise awareness about protecting data, protecting your own data in your digital data, and just being more aware of it. Because I think when the public becomes more aware of protecting their data and their devices, that will feed into industry. And if you're doing it in your own space, in your industry, that raises awareness. So I think education is going to be one of the key things to bring a higher expectation of how data is used, and that will prompt more change. Jenny out.
Wonderful. And then our last panelist, Victor, going to close us out. Final thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to echo what Jenny said about education, because I also believe that the more people we expose this issue to, and the more we bring it up to the conversation, the more people are likely to be influenced to create the demand for new models. And we need those people, data conscious people at all levels, in any industry, in any sector, because data decisions are being made day to day. And if we have the chance to put those people in those positions, and it is more likely that those new processes and those new innovations will be influenced by the new thinking of data dignity. So as more people have said it, I support that we should be talking about it more with people around us and expanding our views by these kind of conversations with others all over. So thank you very much. It was a great conversation.
Well, we appreciated having everyone, and a deep thanks, excuse me, a deep thanks to our panelists and our audience for being here. Really thoughtful room. Love this kind of engagement. Thanks for Julie and everyone who's been attending to the public virtual whiteboard. As a reminder, we host a collaborative whiteboard with all our notes, all the themes, all the dialogues around this topic to try and actually push some legitimate progress around this area and kind of help with that education front. We're inviting contribution and input from anyone and everyone. So, yeah, gonna pass it to Julie now for closing announcements. Next room is gonna be on the 13th of July. So really looking forward to that one as well, to continue this dialogue. And we're gonna get back to our monthly discussions. So, feel free to reach out to me with ideas for the room, ideas for panelists. Gonna pass it to Julie to close it out. And once again, just a deep thanks.
Hi, everyone. Julie here. Thank you, Spencer. Thanks, everyone on our panel. As always, a really great discussion. I wish we could do these all the time. They're just always really, really great and get me really excited. So I can't wait for the next one. As Spencer mentioned, that will be next month, July 13th. In addition, just a note, in addition to this club and room, we also host a long COVID room, a clinical trials room, and a room dedicated to sickle cell. So you can learn more by following our Club Consuli Conversations, tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow. You will see in our profile all our upcoming rooms. We usually try to keep those updated for the next few months. All our rooms are once a month. So additionally, be sure to check out the profiles of everyone here. So give each other a follow. Follow me and Spencer. And for any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, if you would like to be on the panel, if you have someone to recommend for the future rooms, just reach out directly. We love hearing from you guys. So you'll find my email in my bio. And you can find us on social media as well if you prefer to connect that way. We're at Consuli_Inc. across pretty much all the socials. You can DM here. Lots of ways to connect, so please reach out. Again, for those that just joined during our event or after our opening announcements and don't yet know Consuli, Broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with a mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our data is worth $20,000 per year, so we help people take control and choose who gets access to and how their personal health information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. So we do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There is no cost to join our movement. You can learn more at our website, which is pinned to the top of the room. I will leave the music play, a little bit of music playing for anyone that wants to, poke around and check out other people's bios and connect with anybody. I'll just give you a moment to kind of peruse. And I can't wait till the next room. Thank you so much to everyone here. Have a great rest of your day.